Great. So I think we're gonna get started. Can you open the video so we can see?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we're gonna get started. I just wanted to start by thanking people for joining us. This is our inaugural live stream. So if anything goes wrong, then I hope you'll excuse us while we figure out this technology. But I'm really excited to be here. I'll just start with a quick word about myself and why I'm here, and then yeah, we can get into your questions. I'm here because I want to hear from you. I've had the pleasure already of speaking to actually 700 of you on the phone in the past couple of months. And I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot about the reason you use bits and how we can be better. But I'm here because, yeah, I just want to see if I can help and see if there are any questions you have about bits or about your personal situation that we can help with. So, with that said, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to get straight into your questions. If you want to write your questions in the comments section, then I can read them from there and answer them. And so before I do that, actually, I wanted to introduce my colleague Gigi.
Hi, I'm Gigi. You can also put your comments in the live chat and we can see those as well. So whatever works for you.
So we can kind of see as we go along, if people want us to just play through our questions, we can do that. Otherwise, yeah. So for people who are just joining, the format of the session is you type your questions in the comment section, and then we'll answer them for you. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and type them in the comments box, and we can pick up on it from there. Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions yet. Any comments? Let me actually. So let's get started with some questions of our own. Gigi, what's the number one question that people have about bits and about building credit?
I think a lot of people want to know if they check their score, does that affect it at all? I think that's the thing a lot of people think is something that happens.
Yeah. So to answer that question, no, it doesn't. Checking your score doesn't make it go down. You can check your score as often as you want. It's not going to make a difference. The only thing that is the only time your score will be affected by a check is if the check is a hard check and it's done by a company. So you can check your score as many times as you want. It's not going to affect anything. Again, for people who are just joining, welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm Faisal. I'm the founder of Bits. With me is my colleague Gigi. The way we're running the office hours, the hour we have today is just we'll take any questions you have in the comment section. But if we don't get any questions, we're just going to go through some of the common questions that people have about bits and about building credit. So let me move to the next question that I think we get quite often is how can bits help me build credit? Before I answer that, I want to take a step back. As I think most people who are watching this today know, the thing that builds credit is having a payment history. And so that's, when you're asking how is Bits going to build my credit, the way that we build credit for you is by creating a payment history for you with Experian. You know, we set up this line of credit, you make regular payments on that. The limit on the line of credit and the regular payments get reported to Experian, and that's the thing that actually builds your credit. I see you have a question. So we have a question from George, which is that if you change your plan, are there more chances that your score goes up or will it remain the same? So I think if I understood your question correctly, you're saying, will my score go up more if I have a higher plan versus if I have a lower plan? The answer is yes. So as a general rule, the higher your plan, the more your score will go up. There are some exceptions to that, and I'll talk about that shortly. But basically, each plan has its credit limit linked with it, right? So the £2 plan has a £72 limit. The £40 plan has a £1,440 limit. Higher plans have higher limits, and higher limits will generally mean a bigger impact on your score. Why does a higher limit mean that it's a bigger impact on your score? It's just because of the way that scoring works. When you have a higher limit, Experian sees that as you being more creditworthy. They see that as you being able to afford more, and therefore it has a bigger impact on your score. There are some exceptions, so for example, if you already have a lot of debt, you have more than £5,000 in debt, then I wouldn't recommend going for the highest plan. Also, if you have recently entered into an IVA, if you've recently declared bankruptcy, if you've received a CCJ in the past couple of months, these are all situations in which you probably want to consider whether you actually should use BITS or not. Because the situations I mentioned are situations in which you're basically much better off just waiting it out and not doing anything. Any other questions that the viewers want us to answer right now? Okay. I'm going to move on to, so again, for people who are just joining us now, feel free to dive in with questions and write them out in the comment section. I'm going to move on to another very common question that I get, which is, fine, I'm going to use BITS, but like, how long do I have to actually keep this thing for? Can I, if I change my mind in a couple of months, can I cancel it? The answer to that is, yeah. I mean, you can cancel this thing whenever you want. It's a month-to-month subscription that you have. However, I would say that, if you are already thinking about that, then it's probably not worth doing. Like your score, if you stay with us for a few months and then you leave, your score will still go up, but you're sending the negative signal to lenders. And so when lenders look at you and decide, okay, am I going to lend to this person or not, they will look at your score and your history, but they're also going to look at signs of stability, right? If you're opening and closing credit accounts really quickly, you open a BITS account, you close it in 3 months, what you're doing is you're signaling instability, and that's not the kind of behavior that lenders like to see. Also, one of the factors that affects your credit score is the average length of period that you've had your credit accounts for. So for these two reasons, I would really not recommend using BITS if your intention is to kind of open and close it quickly. I would say at a minimum, you should plan to keep your BITS account for at least a year. And therefore, whatever plan you choose as well, make sure that it's something that will be affordable over the course of a year, if not longer. I see there's a question coming from Crypto Loan Compare. Is BITS a regulated lender? No. BITS is not a regulated lender. We do not need to be regulated. There are exemptions that by default, any lending agreement between a company and an individual falls under the Consumer Credit Act. However, there are certain exemptions that apply. For example, if you're not charging any interest, which is the case for us. Also, for example, if it's a buyer, supplier, vendor agreement, where the issuer and the lender and the merchant are all the same party, that's another scenario in which you wouldn't have to be regulated. So based on what I've described, the exemptions that we qualify for, we don't need to be regulated. And this is something, by the way, that we have verified with the best law firm in the country as well, which is Linklaters. I see a question coming from Alistair, which is there a reason you only report to Experian? And then you express concern about the score not moving with other credit bureaus. So we are, there's no particular reason. It's just that Experian was the one that was hungriest for business at the start. So we got set up with them. We are in the process of getting set up with Equifax and TransUnion as well. Equifax should be the next one coming online, but I hear you on this. We will be live with all three. I don't know the timelines right now because I'm kind of I'm chasing these guys as well, but the next one most likely will be Equifax. I see another question coming from George, which is, will it affect my credit score if I cancel the subscription? It shouldn't. So, it depends on. So in general, it shouldn't. For 98% of the people, it's not, canceling will not affect your subscription, even though for the reasons I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't advise it. If you're completely new to credit, if you're 18, 19, you don't have a credit history, then it's possible that canceling will actually negatively affect your credit, because if you cancel, then what it does is, if you cancel quickly, it's going to reduce the average age of your credit accounts, and that might work against you in terms of bringing your score down. But as I said, in 98% of cases, this shouldn't happen. And just anecdotally, I have not heard from anyone whose score went down because they canceled. We have a question coming from Crypto Loan Compare, which is, I don't remember signing a loan agreement with Bits. So what exactly am I committing to? So there's, you can see our terms and conditions. And during the sign-up process, you do actually agree to those terms and conditions. So if you want to see what you've committed to, I would encourage you to open up the T's and C's, which are on our website. Any other questions from any of the viewers? Okay. Kiki, what are some of the other common questions we get?
I guess we could talk about other good types of credit that might look better on your file than others.
Yeah, so that's a good question. What I would start by saying is that not all credit is created equal. There are some forms of credit that will actually harm your score and will send a pretty strong negative signal to lenders when they look at your file. It's pretty self-obvious what those forms are. For example, payday loans, other short-term, high-interest loans. Overdraft is actually another one. Guarantor loans. I think a common mistake that I see is people taking out guarantor loans in order to build credit. As a general rule, you should probably stay away from these if you can. The three best ways to build credit are: number one is a credit card, number two is mobile contract, and three is energy bill. So if you've ever been on the phone with me, which a lot of people who use Bits have, you would have heard this from me already, which is the three ways that I always suggest building credit are credit card, mobile contract in your name, and energy bill in your name. Why are these three the best ways to build credit? Because number one, because of how the scoring is done, the algorithms. But more than that, these three things, credit card, mobile, energy, these are things that everyone in this country needs, right? So it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor, if you have good credit or bad credit. Just like to function in modern society, you need these three things. And so that's why having these three things on your credit file is not going to send any kind of negative signal to lenders that, oh, here's someone who's struggling. Linked to that, like often, people will ask us, well, hey, what's the difference between you guys and all these other, credit building loan facilities? And I think you should obviously read your reviews and kind of do your own research on this. But I think probably the biggest difference is how the product is structured, right? Loans are exactly that, loans. Unfortunately, when you take a loan, even if it's a credit building loan, unfortunately, there's a little bit of a stigma attached with that. So when lenders see loans on your file, they might assume that you took the loan because you needed the money. Because of GDPR and privacy restrictions, companies and lenders, when they look at your file, they can't actually see who you got the credit from. So for example, if you take out a 200-pound credit building loan, you may know that you've taken it out from a credit building company, but lenders looking at your file will not know that, because they can't see the name of the company involved, only you can. And so this is the reason why I kind of caution people against taking out any kind of loans to build credit, because unfortunately there is a little bit of stigma attached to it, which is that you needed to take a loan, and lenders don't know what you know, which is that this thing. I see a question from Amy. Hi, Amy. I actually recognize your name from the emails. It's good to see you here. The referral program, yeah, I mean, we're open to suggestions. In terms of how our referral program works right now, for every successful referral that you send our way, we add £10 credit to your account. We should do more, I think, but that's what it is right now. So we have a question from Crypto Loan Compare, which is, how are we different? I'm going to assume that your question is, how are we different from credit from other loan services? I think there are three things that I would say. Number one is, as I had mentioned, how this is structured. What you get from Bits is a digital credit card. It's not a loan, it's a credit card. And that is a huge, huge point of difference. Why is that a point of difference? One, because in the credit scoring algorithms, credit cards score a lot higher than loans. And two, with a credit card, you're not sending any negative signal. I mentioned earlier that with loans, you always have to worry about, what is the lender going to think of this? Are they going to think I was desperate? That's why I took a loan. With the credit card, you don't have any such issue. And so in terms of its effectiveness, in terms of the signal you're sending to lenders, that's one point of difference. I think the other point of difference is just how easy it is to use. We are a mobile app. There's no web sign up. If you're looking for something that's simple and easy to get started with, that you will be approved for, then this fits the bill. And then finally, I haven't used the other services, so I can't comment on their service, but I know that within Bits, we do try to be as responsive as we can. You can always speak to us. We're generally an hour away on email. And if you've ever heard from Fez, that's me. I do personally reply to a lot of customer service emails as well. Okay.
I think maybe Amy was asking about Bits Rewards as well.
Oh, Bits Rewards. Sorry, I missed that part. So Bits Rewards is interesting. When we started, so the idea behind Bits Rewards was we wanted to give people something back from using Bits, because one way to look at it is, okay, you're building your score, but then on the other hand, you're also kind of, every month you're paying a fee in, and it would be nice to see something in return for that beyond just an improvement in your credit score. And so the idea behind Bits Rewards is basically to reward loyalty to us, but also commitment. If you make a commitment, you stay with Bits for a couple of years, then you should be rewarded for that. And we're still kind of figuring out where to go with this, but what I'm moving towards, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts on this, is essentially the following, right? I know that most people who use Bits use it ultimately because they want to get a mortgage. Well, what if all the money that you're putting into Bits, that you're paying right now, what if a portion of that became our contribution to the deposit on your home purchase? That would be pretty awesome, right? And so that's kind of the idea that I'm tinkering with right now in terms of what Bits Rewards becomes. I see we have a question from Alistair, which is, do we have any plans in the future to offer more products like a credit card you can spend with? We have been thinking about it. To be honest with you, we haven't seen, basically if enough people want it, then we'll do it. But as of now, the feeling I get is that most people who use Bits, they just want a mortgage at the end of it. They don't really want they don't want a physical credit card. But I may be wrong. If there's enough people who want it, just tell me and we can look at this. Okay. Gigi, what are some of the other questions we get?
So if I'm 18 and I have no credit on my file, what would you say is maybe the first thing that I should attempt to get out of credit? Is there anything that's easier to get, or I'm more likely to get as a new to credit person?
So actually, before I get to that, I see we have a question from Crypto Loan Compare, which is, so you tell Experian we have a credit card with you, but we really don't, as there's no card. That's not true. So you do have as we say when you sign up, it is a digital credit card, and you do have this. So I don't think that's true. I see we have a question coming in from Kalindi, which is, I saw one of your videos a while ago about things like Klarna, catalog credit, and the general message was don't do it because if you don't keep up with payments, it'll hurt you. My question is this: if I keep up with my payments all the time, will that improve my score? Short answer, yes, it will improve your score. Because it's a credit line and because you're making payments on it, it should improve your score. Not as much as a credit card, but it should improve your score. Yeah. Kalindi, the other thing I would say is, if you're, a lot of times people just don't know what to do next in terms of building their score. Um, if obviously you should have the Experian app, but within the Experian app, if you upgrade to their paid subscription, I think it's called Experian Credit Expert, then they actually have a section there where they will tell you literally like, do this and your score will go up by so many points. They also have a section where they will show you that if you just keep doing what you're doing now, what will your score be in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and so on. So if you're in the position where you've seen your score go up, but maybe it's kind of flattening out and you're not sure what to do next to make it keep going up, I would recommend buying the Experian Credit Expert subscription. You can just do it within their app. It's £16. Just do it for 1 month. You just really need to do it once. Do it for 1 month. See what they tell you about. These are the things you need to do to keep building your score. And I think personally it's really worth it because that's coming straight from them in terms of this is what you should do to build your score. Yeah. So, Gigi, you had a question about if someone's just turned 18 and they want to build their score, what is the first thing they should do? I think the first thing to do is just get all 3 of the credit agency apps. So get Experian, then you should get ClearScore or Equifax for Equifax, and then Credit Karma for TransUnion. So the first thing to do, like if you're trying to build credit, is just to know what's on your file today. So I would start, if I had just turned 18 and I was in the UK and I wanted to build credit, I would start by just, number 1, downloading all these apps. And then number 2, going back to the 3 best ways to build credit. I'm a bit biased, but I would get a bit subscription. I would get my name added to the energy bills at home. And third, I would try at least to get a postpaid mobile connection. Oh, thank you. Glad to hear that, Kalindi. Yeah, Kalindi has a good point about paying bank debts. I think it's probably worth stating, even though it is a bit self-evident, but if you have debts, so if you have other credit cards and you have significant balances on them, more than 30% of the limit, if you're in default or you've missed other payments, that like the number 1 way to build credit if you're in that situation, if you have a lot of debt or if you have high other credit card balances, the number 1 way to build credit is just to bring your debt levels down. A lot of people are surprised by how sensitive their credit score is to their credit card balance, but it's true. I think from my side, the biggest mistake that I see people make when they're trying to get build credit is they'll take out, so the biggest mistake that I see is, people will get like a £200 Capital One credit card or a £200 limit Aqua credit card, and then they'll max it out. They'll kind of use the whole thing each month and then pay it off in full, thinking that, by showing that you can spend and pay it back, you're building your score, but actually you're destroying it. Your score is, just remember, your score is very, very sensitive to the balances that you have on your credit cards. So if you do have other credit cards, keep your balances below 30%. If they're not below 30%, then bring them below 30%. That's the single best way if you're in that position to build your score. We have a question from George, which is that if I had a debt which I already paid in full, my credit score will start to increase. Yes, it will. Just there's a little bit of a time lag though. So for example, if you had a debt, and then if you had a debt to pay, and let's say you paid that back this month, then it'll probably take another 6 to 8 weeks before your files get updated with that. But once your files are updated with that, you will start to see your score going up by paying off your debts. Yeah. Gigi, what are the other common questions? Or what do you think? what do you think, like, when you're trying to build credit, is there like a good score? Um, or are there just kind of general good behaviors to follow if you're trying to build credit?
I think with credit building, the score isn't the important part. Like, obviously, you need a good score, and lenders are going to look at it, but it's not the be all and end all. They're going to look at your file as a whole. And like Faisal was saying earlier, it's about having those types of credit that everyone has and everyone needs. So you don't stand out from people who have issues with credit. You just want to look good in general by having, your energy bills, your credit card that you're paying off and keeping below 30%, and your mobile phone contract, and anything else could weigh negatively against you.
Yeah. Also, like on this point about the score not being the only thing that matters, an unfortunate consequence of the way that scores are calculated is, when these scoring algorithms were written in the 1970s, it turns out that at that point in time, actually, your postcode was a pretty good predictor of your likelihood to pay back, because the postcode, London wasn't as kind of spread out as it is now, and neither were other cities. And so basically, banks would kind of look at your postcode and say, okay, this guy lives in a good postcode. He's likely to be a good bet for lending to. And what I'm trying to go over of that of this legacy of, your postcode determines your credit worthiness. Unfortunately, if you live in a bad postcode, your starting score could be low. On the opposite side of that, someone who's who's just turned 18, whose address is in Notting Hill, London, will probably start with a credit score of 900 or something. But just know that lenders have figured this stuff out now, right? So if you have a good score just by accident because you were born in a good postcode, that doesn't mean people are going to lend to you, right? Maturity and depth of your files matters a lot. And this goes back to the point I was making earlier about, please don't open and close credit accounts quickly, because it signals lack of maturity. Ideally, you want to open stuff and then run with it for a couple of years. Yeah. So if I were, going back to Gigi's question, like if I were trying to build, if I had turned 18, I'm a little bit older than 18, but if I just turned 18 and I was trying to build credit, I would start by getting all three apps, so Experian, TransUnion, Experian, Equifax, and Credit Karma. But then I would also try to build a bit of a history, right? You want, as I said, you want to show that you can not only be good with credit, but that you can be good with credit over a sustained period of time. And so for that reason, doing things and doing them for a long time is a good idea. Now, there are some exceptions. Obviously, if you have a bad type of a loan, like a guarantor loan or a payday loan, those are not things I would suggest continuing over a long period of time. What are some of the other questions we get?
I guess.
What are some of the toughest situations that we've had to deal with? I can think of a few.
I guess CFAS markers are always an interesting situation. People who have those in their file.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think some of the toughest situations that we have to deal with are when people have CFAS markers on their file. I don't know if it's relevant to anyone here, but you get a CFAS marker. CFAS marker is basically when a bank or a lender reports your name to CFAS, which is a fraud agency, saying there's been some suspected fraud in this guy's account. Now, usually people get a CFAS marker not because they're actual fraudsters, but usually people get CFAS markers when they let other people use their bank accounts. And so for anyone watching this, I would urge you, again, it's a common sense thing. Hopefully no one's even doing this, but for anyone watching this, I would say, please don't ever let anyone use any of your financial accounts. Because if you do, and you get caught, then there's a very strong chance you can end up with a CFAS marker on your file. The unfortunate thing, if you have a CFAS marker, is even if you have good credit, it's very unlikely that a lender is actually going to lend to you in that situation. So it is, there are ways that you can challenge a CFAS marker and so on, but really it's a lot easier if you don't get into that situation. Another difficult situation that I can talk about here is, and actually something that maybe people don't fully realize, but given that a lot of people kind of watching this are building their score in the hope of getting a good mortgage. I also want to say, remember when you apply for a mortgage, in most cases, it's going to be a joint mortgage between you and your partner. And so, whatever good things you're doing, you want to make sure that your partner is staying on track as well. And so, this is perhaps a rare case in financial services where your eligibility for a product is going to be determined not just by you, but also by your partner. On the topic of mortgages, since I know that that is something that a lot of people who use BITS care about, I want to start actually by giving you a little bit of hope, which is that even if you have bad credit, right, that doesn't mean at all that you can't get a mortgage. I would guess that 90 to 95% of people who use BITS can get a mortgage today anyway. The thing, the reason for building credit is to expand that pool of mortgages, right? Because right now, let's say there are 200 mortgage lenders in the market. If you have bad credit, your choices, if you were to apply today, are probably going to be limited to a couple of them, 2 or 3, and the rates won't be that great. Maybe it's 4% plus interest rate. But if you can build up your credit, you invest in building up credit, then that pool will widen. It'll go from 2 or 3 to hopefully 20 or 30, and the rate you get goes from 4% to 1%. But I don't want anyone watching this to think, okay, well, if I have bad credit, I'm never going to get a mortgage. Absolutely not. You will get a mortgage, but obviously, if your credit is better, then you'll get a better mortgage, and a better mortgage means you save money. You don't have to pay interest to a bank. So there is hope, and regardless of where you are on the credit spectrum, you will have options. But the further along you are towards great credit, the more options you have and the more money you save. So we have a question from Crypto Loan Compare, which is, so I think the question from Crypto Loan Compare is, what do we actually tell Experian, and then what happens to the balance? So just kind of the mechanics of how this works. I think honestly, the simplest way to understand this would be to actually look at your credit report, because your credit report, I'm assuming you are a subscriber in any event, so BITS, but what you'll see is the following. You'll see that we've created a BITS line of credit for you, a BITS digital credit card. So you'll see BITS, you'll see our company name. Our company name is FEA Card Limited, FEA Card Limited. You'll see the limit on your BITS credit line. You'll see what you spent. So what you spent was the amount of the subscription fee, for example, £20. You'll see what you repaid, so again, £20, and then you'll see the ending balance, which will be zero so long as you paid your monthly fees on time. So it's not, for example, if you have a £720 limit, you won't see that you have a balance of 720. Your balance will just be the amount of your subscription fee, and then you'll see that being paid off, and you'll end with a balance of zero. Good question. Okay. Any other questions that people have?
So I guess if I've just managed to clear the debt that I had on my file and I've signed up for BITS, how long would you recommend that I wait until I apply for a mortgage?
That's a good question. So let me just rephrase the question for people who missed it. The question is, I've just, let's say I've just cleared off all my debts and I've started using BITS. How long should I wait before applying for a mortgage? There's no perfect, there's no kind of right or wrong answer. I would say at least 6 to 9 months. So again, your score will go up within the first month and the second month and so on. So that it's not that, it's just that I think if the reason for using BITS is to prove to a mortgage lender that you can get this line of credit and keep it in good order, then I think 6 to 9 months is the minimum period of time that you'd need to do that for a mortgage lender to actually look at it and say, okay, I believe this guy. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'd love to hear thoughts from the viewers on is what do we do next, right? I think we have, I'm personally really proud of the work we've done in terms of helping people build credit and hopefully understand it a bit better as well. But what else would you like to see BITS doing? Would you like to see us offering BITS mobile contracts, a BITS credit card, a BITS marketplace where you can see what mortgages you qualify for based on the data we have? Okay. So we have another question from Kalindi, which is Kalindi says, I don't use my BITS card in terms of spending it. I just use it to build my score in terms of me paying more money into BITS and not spending it. So my limit goes up. Or does it not work that way? Yeah, that. So you can't actually, I think you use the words paying money into your BITS card. So remember, this is not a debit card, right? This is not a prepaid or a debit card. With a prepaid or debit card, it's like an account you put money in and it sits there. This is not that. This is a credit card. So with a credit card, there's no concept of putting money in there to save it. So the money that you pay each month, that's a fee. That's not a deposit that comes back to you. The limit that's assigned to your card, that depends on the plan you choose. And I should probably talk a bit more about that just so people understand how it works. Now, you may have noticed that our limits have slightly unusual numbers, right? Like 72 pounds, 144, 432. Why do we have these strange limit numbers? The reason we have these strange limit numbers is because when we report, then we have to prove basically whatever limit we give you, we have to demonstrate to credit agencies that you're actually credit worthy or good for that number. So for example, if we're reporting you for a 144 pound limit, we have to have a way of justifying this, right? And the way we do it is by making sure that your monthly payment to us is such that over a period of 3 years, you would end up paying an amount equal to the limit. So your limit is 36 multiplied by the monthly payment that you make. Exactly, that's right. So for example, Kalindi, if you were to go to the 12 pound a month plan, then your limit would be 12 multiplied by 36, which is 432. Yeah. Yeah. So we have a comment from Amy, which is that in regards to what's next, maybe we could have a credit card matching the affordability to what we are currently paying for every month for the subscription. Yeah, we can do that. We can. So again, I'm open to ideas. I think for us, it's just a question of like, if enough people want it, right? So doing an actual physical card is pretty complex. There are a lot of issues there in terms of like just compliance and different things. So if there's enough people who want it, we can definitely do it. It is interesting, I actually find myself wanting a BITS physical card as well, and the reason for that is, I think it's maybe a question of service, right? I mean, it's very interesting when I think about, I think about strategy a lot and so on, but when I look at other credit building products and then I look at like generally lenders, I think there's this kind of interesting phenomena, which is that most lenders and most credit building services are on the side of the lender, if that makes sense. So, where do these credit building loan companies, where do most of them actually make their money from? They make their money by handing you off to a lender, right? They get paid by lenders, and so they're clearly on the lender's side. Even big marketplace aggregators, right? I don't want to name them, but the places you go to search for loans and mortgages, these guys all get paid by lenders. So they're kind of on their side, right? We did something interesting at the start, which I know some of you didn't like, but we said, okay, we don't want to go down that route because everyone's kind of doing that, right? It's a lot more interesting to actually be on your side, which is the side that I'm on individually as well, right? The side of the consumer. And so that's kind of the reason why we charge, right? Is yes, I understand it's a bit uncomfortable, but it means we don't kind of have to be on the lender's side, right? We can just do what we think our customers want, and that's quite powerful. But that also means it opens up a lot of possibilities for us in terms of where we could go. I don't need, as a business, like we don't need to start selling your data to anyone else, and we'll never do that, right? Because the minute we do that, we lose our credibility. For us, what's worked, I think, quite well is being squarely on your side, on the consumer side. And I think it's a lot more interesting for us to kind of, in the long term, explore other ways of doing that, whether it's through a physical credit card or whether it's through other credit building products. I see we have a question coming in from Amr, which is that I'm currently on the £40 a month plan, but if I want to switch to £100, would it make a big difference? And then continuing with that question, Amr has a question about explaining the BCS that he has and the value of them. Amr, Amr, to answer your question about upgrading to a higher plan, as I mentioned earlier, in general, the higher the plan, the more the impact, because higher plans have higher limits, and higher limits do have a bigger impact on your credit score. With that said, I would suggest in this case, book a call with us. So just drop us an email, hello@getbits.app, and we'll reply sending you our calendar link. So I think this is probably something we can talk about offline. Book a call. I'd love to understand a little bit more about your particular credit situation. And once I do, then I can give you kind of a better sense of whether it makes sense for you to upgrade to 100 or not. And then your other question, Amr, about BCS. So our rewards program actually used to be called Bitcoin, Bitcoins BCS. Not surprisingly, a lot of people confuse that with cryptocurrency, which we have absolutely nothing to do with. So we've actually renamed the rewards program to Bits Rewards. We are kind of figuring out what to do with it. And as I mentioned earlier, one very interesting idea that I'm exploring right now is letting you convert your Bits Rewards into a small cash contribution towards your deposit on a home purchase. But if you have other ideas of what we should do with it, for example, if you'd rather just convert it straight up to cash, we can consider that as well. The next question that we have is from Crypto Loan Compare. So the question is, by what you said earlier, each month my balance goes to £0. I thought the agency wanted to see a balance. That's actually a great comment. The first part of it, that your balance goes to zero, yes, so long as you make your payments on time. If you miss a payment, then your balance won't be zero. Your point about the agency wants to see a balance. This is actually a big misconception, I think, that exists about credit scores. The misconception being, well, the more I spend, the better it is for me. It's actually not true. You need to keep your card active, and therefore you do need to spend on it, but it doesn't need to be anything more than 1 or 2 swipes a month. So it doesn't make a difference. Like as someone who knows, as members of Experian, we know how well. We don't know the exact formula, but we definitely have a better view than consumers do. And obviously, without sharing any confidential information, I can tell you, just as a consumer, it doesn't make a difference. Like if you're carrying a £50 balance versus if you're carrying a £200 balance, if you spend £50 a month on your credit card versus 200, it is not going to make your score go up anymore. The thing that does matter is the limit, and number two, like what percent of the limit you're using. The only thing I would say is, if you're spending more, so in terms of your score, it won't make a difference. But if your intention is to basically like keep increasing your limit and get a bank credit card, then yes, I think lenders, when they look at your credit file, credit card providers in particular, they do like seeing activity. So from a score perspective, it's not going to make a difference, but spending a bit more is probably going to help you when you actually apply for a bank credit card. Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. This is I do like I understand that at some points how we communicated, especially on the website, wasn't entirely clear, and so part of the reason why we've started doing well, this is our inaugural one. Part of the reason for doing this video call is just to show you that we're human. We're human. We care, but that also that we're here and we can answer any questions you have. What else? Um, there was one more topic, Gigi, with people who own their own companies and then they apply for stuff. That's something we've noticed as well, right? Like the accidental impact it has on your score.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that, especially if you're just starting out a business or it's a small business still, that when you apply for business credit, it's actually going to impact your personal credit file. And so you do need to be really careful when you're making applications for business credit. It has the same rule as making personal applications, that if you make too many in a short amount of time, it can really negatively impact your score.
And also, I think one of my favorite ones is just opening bank accounts, right? Often I'll speak to people and I'll ask them, have you made their score? Sometimes like people's score goes down, and then they call us and they say, well, what just happened, right? Why did my score go down? And I'll try to help them understand that. And so I'll ask them, did you apply for anything? And they'll say, no, I didn't apply for anything. And then I'll say, okay, did you open any bank accounts? And they'll say, yeah, but that was for my business account, or yeah, it was just a current account, right? Unfortunately, when you apply for a bank account, almost all banks will do a hard check on you. And by the way, that includes business as well, right? So if you're running your own business and you open a bank account for your business, that is most likely going to show up as a hard search on your personal file. I know that bank accounts are I find it fascinating because unlike all the other things you see on your credit file, bank account isn't really a credit account unless you have an overdraft. But just opening a bank account is kind of interestingly, it shows up on your credit file, and even though it's not actually credit. But just be careful with that because I think a lot of people just don't realize that it's going to affect their credit score. There was one more point that I wanted to make, which is just around longevity. And it is easy when your score sometimes, look, I mean, you're living life and, you need credit for a reason, which is to live a better life and to make sure that finances, that credit doesn't come in the way of the things that you want. But sometimes it'll happen that you just, you're trying to build credit, but you need to get something. You need to get a new mobile contract. You're trying to get a mortgage, but at the same time, you have this side need that you need to apply for, and they're going to run a hard check. So, a good example is someone's trying to build up a mortgage, and then they realize, actually, I want to switch my mobile provider, and then they'll apply for a new mobile account. That will obviously push your score down a little bit because a hard search will be done on you. I guess my message here is don't obsess about your score, right? If it goes down a little bit because you got something you needed, I really wouldn't worry about that. Treat this as a long-term thing, right? If your score goes up or down a little bit each month, you should definitely know why. And by the way, like the biggest reason why it goes up and down each month is either you're applying for stuff, or you have another credit card and the balance has gone up. So you should definitely know why the movement is happening, but give it, credit is something that doesn't get built overnight. You need to give it some time, you need to give it some space, right? And that's why, again, I really encourage people who don't have it to get the Experian Credit Expert subscription. I encourage you to do that because there you can actually see that if you keep doing what you're doing, then where will your score be in 3, 6, 12, 24 months, and so on. So it gives you the long-term picture, which I think is often missing. Because if you just check your score, it's very easy to fall into this trap of like short-term, today my score is this, tomorrow it's that, but you want to take a little bit of a long-term view on this thing. And so that's why I think seeing that projected score I found it quite helpful. So for example, for me to get, I don't have a 999, I'm close to it. I have a 987, but what Experian tells me is the thing that's going to get me to a 999 is getting on the electoral roll. Now, I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't seen their projections. We have one more question coming from Kalindi, which is, I've upgraded to the £12 a month plan. How long will it take to show up to Experian? Is it just the standard 3 months? No. So I'm assuming you're already a subscriber with Bits, Kalindi. So if you upgrade this month, then basically in the next, so we've literally just submitted our report for August, which means that basically by Monday evening, there will be an update. The August reporting will be on your file by Monday evening. But yeah, if you've upgraded today, then within 4 to 5 weeks, I would expect you to see the upgrade showing up on your Experian file. Also, Kalindi, I know you brought up the standard 3 months. Um, I know that we say in the app that it can take 8 to 12 weeks or something. It actually doesn't take that long. I mean, generally, for most people, it's between 4 to 6 weeks before it shows up on your file. We say 3 months just because we would rather over deliver and not under deliver, but in reality, it's never really more than 6 weeks. And the reason it's 6 weeks, so then the question is, okay, I'm paying for this thing. Like, I don't get it. Like, why is it not immediate? Why do I have to wait for 6 weeks, right? The reason for that is because Experian only allows people, and it's not just Experian, other credit agencies, they only allow you to report once a month. And so, like as I mentioned, we've literally just reported, like an hour ago, we've reported our August data. The next date where we'll report is exactly a month from now. And so if you sign up, imagine if you signed up today, now you'd have to wait until the end of September to see this on your file. So there's not like from a lender side, there's no real reason why we can't report every day, but credit agencies only allow lenders to report once a month, and so that's why it ends up being 6 weeks depending on when you sign up. It may change in the future, by the way. I know that in the US, some of the lenders are now able to report every week. I don't think that's happened in the UK yet, but hopefully it will. Amir's question, I think these are like the last two questions we're going to take before we wrap up. But Amir has a question about how long does it take for bits to be completed 100%. Amir, I think you might be on an old version of the app. So if you upgrade to the latest version in the App Store or Play Store, then you should see that 100% is no longer there. It's a rolling month-to-month contract, so you can cancel whenever you want. But as I had mentioned, I really wouldn't advise doing it before a year is up. And then the final comment from Kalindi was, okay, yeah. I know we say like it takes up to 3 months or slightly less in the app. We're really just trying to set your expectations on that. It doesn't take 3 months. It takes like maximum of 6 weeks. Okay, I think that's a wrap. So yeah, I think that's a wrap. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope it was helpful for people watching it as well. If there's anything that you want to pick up on from this conversation, something personal that you want to chat about, just feel free to email us. It's hello@getbits.app. And yeah, we're more than happy to get on a call and speak to you as well, one-to-one if needed. So that's a wrap from my side. Thanks again for joining. And yeah.
Thanks, guys, for watching.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.